Welcome to Longevity Industries' presentation of the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast. I am your host, Dean Phillips. I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Precision Metal Forming Association, and the PMA's Educational Foundation for all of their great work. I had the great pleasure today. I have Troy Roberts with me. He comes to us from Qualtek Manufacturing, where he is the CEO, and he also happens to be chairman of our Precision Metal Forming Association. Welcome, Troy.
Thanks, Dean. Pleasure to be with you.
Great to have you here. So right away, I'd like to get into what is your key takeaway for the Destiny of Manufacturing.
Well, what I really like our listeners to consider are two things today. One, and especially those that are in manufacturing, we need to make sure that we have an adequate supply of skilled workers going forward. And two, it's obviously very current in the news. The current U.S. trade policy must support and not hinder U.S. manufacturers' ability to compete globally.
Yeah, and that, just to give you my background, that's the exact reason I got involved with the Precision Metal Forming Association way back when, in the early 2000s, when we went down this road before, and it didn't work well then. And it hasn't been the best for a lot of manufacturers this time around either. So sorry, please go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, please.
No, I was just going to add on to that. It's so true. We think we would learn from history, but the lessons with the Bush administration back in the early 2000s is repeating itself.
Yes.
And we're really concerned that, and now it's using tariffs or taxes as a way to deal with their trade partners. It's not only ineffective, but it's really damaging our industries long term. The Section 232 tariffs, which are the tax on American steel and aluminum using manufacturers, really put us at a big disadvantage as compared to our overseas competitors. A good example of this, to give you some numbers, the hot roll price on July 22nd, the world export hot roll price was $511 per ton. The EU price is $543 per ton. And the U.S. price, with tariff adjusted, $631 a ton. Yeah. That's a 23.5% increase, cost increase compared to the world export price, and 16.2% compared to the EU price. And I'm sure your listeners, whatever they're involved with and however they compete, if you've got a double-digit cost disadvantage compared to your competitors, you're going to have a real tough road to hoe.
Yeah, and I think that's what people have to realize, is that it is a global market, and your cost of materials severely impacts your end price to the user, and it's hard to be competitive when your raw materials have such a higher and dramatic shift from what your competitors are doing in the worldwide market.
Absolutely. And now with, because this truly is a trade war, this goes way beyond what we saw back in 2000. And I'd say this misapplied practice spilling over into so many other product categories now. And it raises the cost to the U.S. consumers who ultimately pay that price.
Yeah.
And the impact that it's having on, the suppliers to those markets is devastating. So I did some research over the weekend, and just in the month of June alone, U.S. businesses paid $6 billion more in tariffs compared to June of the previous year. So that's one of the highest tariffs, highest amount of tariffs collected in 1 month in our history. And it's up $2.5 billion more compared to June of last year, so 74% increase. And since the administration started this whole tariff war, which started back in 2018, we've collected $27 billion more, paid $27 billion more in tariffs since this whole process started. And the thing that's hard to understand is it says, well, this is punishing, the people that are trying to export here. What it's really doing is punishing the people who pay the bill. And that's the American consumer and the American producer.
Yes. And I think that's what's proved out to be the last time we tried this experiment, and I don't see it changing. So tell us a little bit about your background and about Qualtek.
Well, I guess the best way I can sum up Qualtek, I'll tell you about it first. I think it's best summed up by our business model, which we make high quality tooling that will provide a high quality stamping, and our value add is the metal finishing service that we provide. So anodize, electropolish, passivation, and our primary markets are the medical device and aerospace markets. And
so what got you into manufacturing?
Well, my background, I was an auditor in a CPA firm after university, and most of my clients were manufacturers. And like many people in the auditing game, eventually they may join a client, which I did. I joined a manufacturing firm as their controller, but I became quickly attracted to the operations side of the business and managing the business. And the further I progressed up in the business, I realized my passion was really for developing and executing a plan that you put together, and I wasn't as interested in reporting on what happened in the past.
Right.
So that's what really drove me.
Now, you joined Qualtek. Before that, what was one of your greatest accomplishments, you think, over your career?
Well, prior to joining Qualtek, I worked for IDA America Corporation as their president and CEO in Dayton, Ohio. So I was on the associate side of the association, supplying the industry. And when we came to the U.S., AIDA is a Japanese company, and we started in 1996 when there were a plethora of press companies in the U.S. So we were starting truly as a greenfield startup. We had no name recognition, but through a lot of hard work alongside a great team of fantastic people that I had the privilege of leading from both the U.S. and Japan, we established AIDA as one of the premier stamping press manufacturers in North America. And that was over a very turbulent time, as you know, Dean, through the financial crisis and the implosion of the auto industry, which is, was 75% of AIDA's business. So it was a difficult time, but it was really rewarding to come out on the other side of that, where we had a very strong company and the largest market share in North America.
Tremendous. You should count that as a feather in your cap for how much work you had to go through, because you definitely had to suffer the arrows on the front end when all of that was taking off.
Well, fortunately, we ended up we had the right product at the right place at the right time, but that was not luck. That was through perseverance. Because when we first came onto the market, as I said, there were so many other press builders. Nobody saw a need for another press builder. And then, again, a lot because of I guess the cost competitiveness that started in the 2000s with the tariffs, there was a real shift in automotive to say we needed to move to low cost country sourcing. So you saw a flight of work that left the U.S. Which meant we had fewer customers here. And then you coupled that with the financial crisis, in 2008, 2009, and the bankruptcies in automotive and the consolidation. It was a really crazy time. But then a couple things happened once the financial crisis and had the full impact, and automobile companies basically said we're going to reduce capacity to support producing 10 million cars a year. Well, so they did that, and the supply chain followed. Well, the problem is we're a country that we consume a lot more than 10 million cars a year.
Right.
You eventually run out of cars. So that, at the same time, the Obama administration had enacted the new CAFE restrictions of 54.5 miles per gallon by the year 2025, and that prompted lightweighting and vehicles, and that's when auto designers really turned to aluminum and advanced high-strength steels to process their parts, and conventional stamping equipment, really couldn't handle those products. And fortunately, we had invested a lot of R&D in developing servo-driven presses, and where you could actually program and control the slide motion. And now you had a product that could provide the right kind of motion profile to allow you to form these more difficult materials. And that's what I'm saying. We had the right product, the right place at the right time. And then AIDA really took off from 2010 up until the time I left in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really my hat was really off to our Japanese parent that really just hung in there, because I'm not sure if it would have been an American company that they would have had that kind of patience. Right. Because, starting up and then having to suffer through a financial crisis that was worldwide, but they were rewarded by a very good return at the end of it. So it really was a great time in my career.
Fantastic. So one of the aspects that we have here at the Destiny of Manufacturing is that we'd like to get your view of the future of manufacturing and where you see the landscape changing over the next 5 years. What do you see?
Well, I think one thing, it's going to be dictated a lot by the first point that I made on the takeaway, which is, are we going to have a skilled workforce? That's really the greatest challenge facing our industry right now. At the PMA, we survey our members of what their biggest issues are, and this issue is always either at the top or in the top three. There's a real concern that with, all the, these skilled workers retiring, there are not the people coming in behind them to fill those jobs. So we've had a lot of discussion in Washington where they're lobbying them about addressing this issue, and now you're hearing a lot of discussion in Washington about bringing manufacturing work back to the U.S. That's great, and we applaud that. But we're going to need more people to do that work, and we don't have enough people in skilled positions right now to fill current job openings, which presently starts at 500,000 jobs, and that's going to rapidly grow as you have all these baby boomers and on down the line retiring.
Yeah, and that's one of the areas that I've brought up points when I've spoken to people higher ups, either in the government or in manufacturing, has been, we've taken the approach, okay, yes, we're now going to focus on manufacturing and developing this workforce. That's a, let's say, minimum 2 year to plus development cycle till we have some of those workers. What is manufacturing doing in the meantime to address that? What things are you seeing that you're doing within your company to address some of those?
Well, excuse me. We're working a lot through the PMA and trying to work a coordinated plan. And that plan touches from the national level down to the local level. So at the company level, we're participating in things like manufacturing day, plant tours, and reaching out to technical schools, developing apprenticeship programs, stuff that's building awareness at the local level and trying to get people interested in manufacturing and join not just Qualtek, but anyone in manufacturing, and understand that it truly is a really good career path. It's not just a job. It is a real career path. Mm-hmm. At the association level, at the PMA, we've invested in supporting our members with how do you do these things in your local communities? How do you get involved in manufacturing day? How do you conduct a plant tour? PMA's established a website called Center for Metal Forming Careers, and it's stocked with information and how-to guides. It's got a lot of really cool vignettes and stories about talented young people that have really come to the conclusion that I want to do something different than go the 4-year college route. That wasn't for them. Very bright kids, but they want to do something different. And there's some really neat stories on that website that talk about that. And the PMA and the PMA Education Foundation, they're investing more and more in supporting members and representing manufacturing in front of Congress and the federal government, and continuing to push the administration to advance manufacturing, because it is the backbone of this country, of the economy. And we've got to turn the sentiment around for parents, for children, for schools, for educators, that manufacturing is a great place for a person to have a career.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It starts with awareness. It starts with getting people involved and letting them know what our industry has to offer. And I think that's the first step in getting people back over to understanding the importance of things like vocational schools and apprenticeship programs.
We're seeing. Well, just adding on to that, we're seeing some progress to that now. There was a new leading to lean manufacturing survey that was conducted, and it showed that 1/3 of the Gen Z population, the Gen Z age group is 18 to 22, that they've actually had manufacturing suggested to them as a career option, which is, pretty amazing, compared to the recent past where it was zero.
Right.
Other than you stay away from manufacturing, it's the 3 Ds. It's dark, dangerous, and dirty. And nearly a quarter of these Gen Z young people would now consider a career in manufacturing. And that really is a huge thing. And I'm starting to hear, even in mainstream media now, where we're starting to hear that people are recognizing that, college, a 4-year college degree is not for everyone. And that, there are alternatives out there. And, the things like robotic competitions and stuff like that, and you see these on television now and everything, all this stuff is starting to finally coalesce. And I think the pendulum's starting to swing back the other way. And that's where we have hope.
I see more and more people having an interest through things like smart manufacturing, which kind of are things that get that interest of those younger generations to see what robots can do, what things can, wow, this can turn this on and off. Well, what can this do to improve life for people? And they see that, and they see a value in doing that and getting involved in it. And I think that's some of the the aspect that get people interested first. You have to have them inspired to start with. And I think you're right. I think that a lot of this is coming down the road here and will work its way into apprenticeships and will work its way into technology schools. The other aspect that I see is, or has been a problem, is that people used to think that you got a 4-year degree and it was a guaranteed job when you walked out the door. Well, it's not that way.
No, not at all. When what the amazing thing is, back when I was going to university, I could get summer jobs and make enough money to pay for my school the next year. Now we know today that with how inflation has grown for the general economy versus education is totally whacked out, and there's no way that a kid could do that today. And I got younger people that work for me, and they're trying to save for college for their kids and everything, and they'll ask my take on this, and it's such a big number for them when they go out and calculate out how much money they have to save to get their kids through school. And they say, what advice would you give me about, how do I do this? And I said, well, the best advice I can give you is to really understand, and your child, is to understand the expected return on investment that you're going to get into that education. There's a reason why college debt exceeds $1.5 trillion right now. 1.5 trillion. That's the second highest debt next to mortgages. It's higher than credit card debt. And of that 1.5 trillion right now, over 60 billion of it's delinquent. And this is, really problematic. So you really need to understand that. And I think that the government's understanding this now. There's an act before Congress called the College Transparency Act that, as I understand it, it would force this evaluation to be done. It said, well, what school do you want to go to? What degree do you want to get? So what's the cost of that degree for that 4-year degree? And what kind of job expectations and earnings can you expect once you get that degree? And it'll become very clear that is that worthwhile or not financially. And, and it's a big problem right now, the amount of debt we have. And the more you read about how young people are struggling to, they can't buy that first house because their first house is their college debt that they're going to be paying on for a long time. And really, there are alternatives out there. So not only if kids start to get interested in possibly other different career paths, if you look at what manufacturing can provide, because there's such a demand out there that you can get a career for an extremely cost-effective price and maybe have your education paid for, and you earn while you learn. And that's the case if you get, with tuition reimbursement or apprenticeship programs or all these kind of things that even small companies like Qualtek offer.
Yes. And the Educational Foundation does an awful lot with things like this too. From the PMA side, the PMA's Educational Foundation focuses on getting grants for different programs that are working to develop this workforce that we need down the road. What would you say to why do manufacturers struggle so much with recruitment and retention?
Well, again, this touches on what we were just speaking of. You look at, I'm 59 years old, and, my parents didn't go to college, and that was their number one priority, was to make sure their kids went to college. And that ideal, like many things that happen, you take a good idea to an extreme, it can become a bad idea. It becomes all encompassing. That ideal has worked its way through the education system, everything, to where at all costs and without reason, this is what you should do, is you have to get a 4-year degree. So, when I was in high school, I had wood shop, I had metal shop, we had an automotive class that you could take where you actually build a car. I mean, this was just in your basic, very middle class neighborhood of USA.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came out knowing how to do a lot of things. I didn't choose to pursue a career in a manufacturing on the floor thing. I didn't do that. But I'm very capable of doing a lot of things. You fast forward to kids to today. My kids, if I hadn't forced them to learn some things, they wouldn't know how to, change a light bulb. They're just not. That's not what they're educated at all in school.
Right.
So changing this cultural shift, and it starts, really starting even in grade school and in middle school. STEM programs. This recruitment, you have to have students to recruit,
Right.
which means as they're coming up, they have to start to see that I'm interested in this as a career, this type of field as a career. And so if we're not successful in promoting an atmosphere where people consider things other than a 4-year degree and careers that are not based on a 4-year degree, then we're going to continue to have those problems. But again, the administration supporting a lot of stuff, a lot of bills before Congress, and this is one of the few things I think you'll see bipartisanship cooperation is getting some of these new acts passed that are very beneficial for manufacturing, very beneficial for other types of education.
Absolutely. Well, Troy, I hate to tell you this, but I think we're right about at our end of our limit on our time. I want to thank you so much for being here, and I want to thank the Precision Metal Forming Association and the PMA's Educational Foundation for helping us put this show together. Go out and have a great week. Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Dean. You have a great week as well. Bye-bye.
Thanks.